Hi, and welcome to the MS-4023. This course is designed for those business users that are looking for a simpler way to maximize their effort. So I want to have that AI assistant that helps me summarize my documents, find things faster. That's what this class is all about. We are going to explore Microsoft 365 Chat. In this class, we are going to be discussing the benefit of Microsoft 365. My name is Elias Estevão. I am a principal technical trainer for Microsoft. And Copilot is one of my favorite classes. I enjoy teaching this class because it really sparks that interest. How can we do things that we do faster, easier, and sometimes cheaper? So welcome to the MS-4023. This class, it is designed for those business users that want to get through and get to understand Microsoft 365 Chat. This is only the chat portion that we are going to be discussing. So we're going to look at ways to be more productive, more creative, and more collaborative. This class is designed for you, for the business user with basic knowledge of Microsoft 365, and you want to get through your day, get to know the productivity, be more productive in everything that you do, leveraging your AI assistant. Now, this course, the agenda is going to be very simple. We're going to start by getting to know Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. How do I use it? How it's licensed? What is the benefit of using it? Then we're going to look at effective ways to use prompt. This is not a prompt engineering class, but it is going to give you some basics about getting the most productive prompts to get your Copilot to help you achieve those optimum results. And then we're going to close the session by looking at a smart way to use Copilot, more collaborative. So in this case, we are going to also look at using, for example, pages, and we are going to briefly discuss agents. So welcome to MS-4023. Welcome to the first module. In this module, we are going to get started with Microsoft 365 Copilot. Now, when we talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, it is both your AI assistant grounded on the latest version of the LLM, the large language model, as well as access to the web content. So in this conversation that we are going to have, we are going to focus on going to the web and get the latest information. Maybe I want to summarize a document, I want to be able to be creative on what I'm trying to develop, or create a project based on the latest PMI assertion. Now, for this, when we look at the benefits of using Copilot for Microsoft 365, particularly the chat, is the access to the LLM. This is a conversational interface. As we have our AI assistant is going to help us with the work and the web, but it's going to be grounded particularly on the way we do our work. So this native Copilot chat interface is going to help us start chatting, starting conversation with the AI. And we are going to see that this conversation can be very simple. I can start with simple as a hi and then begin my conversation. If I don't know how to start a conversation with a chat, I can simply tell Copilot, I don't know where to start. Where do I go? And we are going to see that the answers are going to be simple, are going to be creative, and it's going to help us go to the next level. Now, Copilot Chat includes a couple things. First, it is grounded on the web. The latest GPT model, GPT-4o, from OpenAI is going to be available. Also, when we talked about using agents, and we're going to touch on agents today, the agents are going to be metered. So the pricing model is going to be based on consumption. How many or how much I use of those agents. And of course, don't forget about the enterprise protection. This is also available on my chat. And finally, when we talked about collaboration, the Copilot chat pages allows me to do that. I can then save my prompts and save in a way that I can collaborate with my teams. Now, in contrast, from Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat only to the Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is basically a licensed model, we see a little bit of a difference. The licensed model is grounded on your enterprise. So in this case, I'm going to be connecting to my domain. I have to have my email in order to be able to chat, have my components, my Microsoft tools like Teams, Outlook, Excel, all of that connectivity is going to be available. Again, The Microsoft Chat only doesn't have that capability, but Microsoft 365 Copilot is fully licensed for that. I do know that using the Microsoft 365 license, I will need to put my data in my OneDrive, my SharePoint, and I can create agents that my enterprise can use. In contrast with the Microsoft 365 Chat, where the agents are going to be my creation, and I can share some of those, but not to the same level that I do with the enterprise. So when we look at the licensing model, we see that Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat gives us that creativity. I have the web-grounded approach. I can do file upload. I can analyze sites. I can have a conversation with my AI. I can summarize the content. I can also create agents. But if I want to be able to do that within the confines of my enterprise and leverage all the Microsoft 365 tools, I will need the Microsoft 365 Copilot license. With that, let's take a quick look at the chat. Now, when I talk about creating a chat, it's important for us to know that I will need my work email in order to do this. So within your enterprise, you have your Microsoft 365 Copilot, and I'm going to log in with my enterprise email. First, we are going to do this in our demonstration in a couple minutes. We are going to access the m365copilot.com. This is going to give us full access to the chat within the Copilot. And within our browser, we can also access this. Once I have the Copilot license, I can then open my Edge browser, and on the top right-hand corner, we are going to see the symbol of Copilot, and that's where we are going to access. Now, accessing from the browser, we are going to notice that some things may not be quite there. For example, if I want to get to the agents, if I want to be able to configure or look at my chat history in depth, that may not be available on the browser. The chat history, yes. The agents, we are not going to find them in there. In any case, we are going to see that I can also leverage Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat in Outlook. So if I am working with my email, I am open with Outlook, I will then, in the menu bar, I can click on Chat, and I'll be able to access the full-fledged Microsoft Chat. And also in Teams, the same experience that I have by going to M365, I can experience that in Teams as well. And we're going to try that in a couple minutes. Now, remember that Microsoft 365 Copilot app for your desktop and your mobile also available. You can access those by going to m365.cloud.microsoft.com. That's going to give you access to the chat, and you can start producing your prompts, or in this case, using Copilot with your prompts right away. Now, I say producing your prompts because I am a firm believer that, remember, your AI assistant is most knowledgeable. Sometimes we're not quite sure what kind of prompts we should use. Why not ask our assistant? So one of the things that I first do when I start my Copilot is provide a prompt and then ask Copilot to make that prompt more efficient, more concise, and more responsive. Now, let's look at the interface. You see the interface for Microsoft 365. On the top, we are going to find that I have the work mode. This is when I have the full-fledged license for my enterprise, and I have the web mode. The web mode gives me access to the web. It's grounded on the web or grounded on my enterprise. I'll show you the difference of the two of them. I also see some prompt starters. I have some buttons that I can simply click on it, and those are regular prompts that I can start. Maybe there is a summarization of a document. I can upload a document. And then I have the prompt area where I can type in my prompt, and then I can execute. I also, from there, I can access the prompt gallery, which we'll be discussing today. And on the right-hand side, I see the agents and access to the applications that I have shared or I have shared with someone. So from there, why not get started? First, 3 steps. 1, we are going to enter the prompt. That's as simple as that. I can start my Copilot Chat and begin to have a conversation with my agent. I can enter the prompt. It could be a simple one, as simple as hi, or it could be a very complex prompt that I want to be able to use. So to get started, we are going to go through very simple steps. First, we are going to enter our prompt. And this could be a simple prompt, as simple as hi, I want to start a conversation, or complex prompts that I have already practiced, and maybe even ask Copilot to help me with that prompt. Next, we're going to check the sources. It's important for Copilot. If I am going to use a document or look for news, I want to validate the source of that content. And the next thing is going to be the conversation. I can continue that. Why am I a strong believer that we should do this as a bidirectional conversation with Copilot, iteration. Ask some content, you get the response, and you ask some more, giving more details. And we're going to experience that right now. Let's take a quick look at Microsoft 365 Copilot in action. Here we are in our browser. As we mentioned, I can start the Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat by going to m365copilot.com. This is going to give us access to the Copilot Chat. First, notice that I am logging in. Once I am logged in, I can begin to see the Copilot Chat interface. Now, notice on the top, we did mention about the work mode. I can click on the work mode, and I can begin to validate that I can access content within my enterprise. For example, I can use the slash, and I can see people within my organization, files, and I can use those. I can summarize content. And I can also click on the web, and this is going to be the web grounded. So the conversation that I'm going to have here is all related to content available on the web. For example, I can ask for, tell me the weather in Seattle right now. So it's going to go out and look for the latest weather in Seattle, 55 degrees, 13 Celsius, perfect weather. I always tell people, I always bring the good weather to Seattle when I come visiting. Here's an example. Now, notice here I can start a new chat, start a new conversation. This is clear up the conversation. Notice the shield here. It tells me that enterprise data protection is active. That means this conversation is protected. And I also can access pages. We're going to discuss this later. And on the right, I have Copilot agents. And I can create agents, and I can also edit my agents. And on the bottom, I have the chat history from this conversation. Here in the chat area, this is what I enter my chat conversation. As you saw, I ask about the weather. But I also have in here the @ which I can call for my agents. We'll discuss that later as well. I can have a conversation using voice. I can start a dictation. And I can then communicate directly with my Copilot. On the right-hand side, as I mentioned, I have the icon on my browser that also gives me access to Copilot Chat. And finally, let's take a look at accessing Copilot in our teams. And here we are in Microsoft Teams. Notice on the left-hand side, I have the Copilot icon. This gives me access to Microsoft Copilot Chat. Again, I have my work mode and I have my web mode. I also have my shield indicating that enterprise data protection is available. I have my agents and my chat history. Perfect. Now we know how to access Copilot Chat. Now, one example we mentioned about accessing and being more productive. Let's imagine that I am a project manager and I want to create a project for a new opportunity. And for that, I want to use the latest PMI standards. I could very well ask Copilot for that kind of information. Give me an idea of a project plan leveraging PMI. So let's try by say, I want to create, or let's ask Copilot acting as a, let's say, expert project manager. And let's make sure I am on the web. I am acting as an expert project manager. Create a project plan. Did I get this right? A project plan for a new, let's say, solar-powered baby stroller using the latest PMI standards. All right, let's see what Copilot is going to do for us. So Copilot is going to go out, look for the PMI standard. It has been trained on that based on the large language model. It's going to tell us these are the sections that I need to complete for this project, and here is my content. Now imagine if I had to draft this content from scratch. This is one of the reasons why we're saying that Copilot is going to help us be a lot more agile. So now, let's go back to our presentation and see what else we can do in terms of prompting. Now that we have seen how to start Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, I have here a knowledge check, and we are going to leverage Copilot for that. Notice that this is a prompt, it's a comprehensive prompt, follow best practices. How this prompt is going to work. First, we are going to ask Copilot to act as an expert in Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, as it is. Now we're going to ask for 3 multiple choice questions about the key features of Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. And now we're going to also ask how to access, and then of course the different modes that we discussed. And we want Copilot to present us with 1 question at a time, and then wait for our response, and then verify the correct answer, and then give us a brief explanation, and then ask the next question. So let's try to run this prompt for a knowledge check and see what results we get. So here we are back in Copilot Chat. I am going to paste my prompt, and I'll put this in plain text, and let's execute it. Now, first I want to make sure that I am in web mode for this question, and now let's go ahead and run it. So there comes the first question. The first question is, what is one way, or in this case, what is one of the key features of Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat? Real-time language translation? Automated email response? Integration with Microsoft Teams for enhanced collaboration? Or voice recognition or dictation? Now, it's important for us that we follow these processes. If Copilot is giving me these options, I will pick one of those. Whichever answer I get, if it is right, it's going to tell me if it is right. If I am not right, it's going to tell me which one is the correct answer, and then proceed to the next one. I will purposely pick an answer that I think it is wrong, because we know that I can do real-time language translation. I can also do automated email response. No, I cannot. So let's pick that one. Let's pick B as our response, and let us try and see how Copilot is going to respond. First, it says, actually, you answer B, but the correct answer is C, integration with Microsoft Teams to enhance collaboration. That is true. I can start Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat directly from Teams. And then it tells me the benefit of doing that, and then it proceeds to the next question. So this was a simple prompt that you can use to validate your knowledge. And with this kind of prompt, you can enhance it. You can ask for additional questions, maybe instead of 3, could be 5, could be 10. And you can also ask for all questions at the same time, instead of 1 at a time. You can choose how to use this prompt, or you can enhance the prompt as you see fit for your purpose. In this module, we explored how Microsoft 365 Copilot functions as a secure AI-powered assistant designed to really enhance your workplace productivity. You gain insights into the core functionality and the features, including enterprise-ready chat grounded on your web data and, of course, your work data. We also learned that we can access Copilot through various Microsoft 365 apps like Teams, Outlook, Edge, and Microsoft 365 services. Now, you became very familiar with the interface. You learned how to navigate between a web and work mode, and you also discovered the Copilot in terms of prompting, the language that we're going to use, which is protected and very intuitive environment. Now, we are going to dive into the second module, where we are going to immerse ourselves in the art of prompting, the best practices. Let's get going. Welcome to module number 2. In this module, we are going to talk about best practices for a prompt. We call the art of prompting. We're going to learn how to use prompt the best way to get the best results. We're going to also have great examples of how to be more proficient using the prompt techniques. I can be as simple as having a conversation with Copilot, but there are some specific key elements in the prompt that I want to be able to use. And this is going to be applying those best practices that I want to be able to enhance. Well-structured prompts really gets better results. With that, I'm going to see some common prompt mistakes that we can make, and I'm going to introduce you to Microsoft Copilot Prompt Gallery, where we have dozens and dozens of prompts well curated for you to try as well. When we are working with Copilot and the prompts, it is important for us to see from a structural perspective. Again, these are guidelines that are based on our experience working with the prompts and taking the best approach of getting the best results from Copilot. So one of the very first things we notice is the context. You saw that I said acting as, for example, project manager expert. Why do I want to do that? So it's important to have that context. I want to do this because I am going to have a meeting with my senior directors, and I want to have that conversation at that level. Maybe I'm going to have a meeting with my peers as a developer. The conversation is going to be at a different level, right? So this is the why we want to have this approach. The next is the goal. What do I want to achieve with this? This is the what. Well, I want to be able to do this because I want to have this project plan. I want to have a content available to me because I'm going to present that to someone. So I have the goal, I have the context. And the next one is the source. I did say use the PMI to be able to provide that. Why? Because this information, I have the sample, could be a website that I want to use. It could also be a document that I want to be able to refer to. So get the context, get the goal, get the source, and then the expectation. This is exactly how I want this format to be. Now, in this case, is how. Maybe I want this format in a table format. I want it to be, let's say, the Harvard Business School format. Could be a summarization. I can make a decision on that. So these 4 elements, from our perspective, is a great guideline to help us create this. Here's an example of a prompt that leverages all of those elements. I work in a marketing focus, competitive research, right? So it could be that you can say, Copilot, you are the one working on that. But I say that I am. It's kind of symbiotic. Could be myself or it could be Copilot. It sets that frame of mind. Give me a concise summary, let's say in this case, of recent news. Maybe there's a specific news about a specific organization. I'm pointing to that direction. Focus on particular web articles, maybe last week, but here we're saying the last 2 months, kind of old. Maybe I want to, no, last week would be newer, or even last couple hours. Things change so fast. And then, of course, provide me answers in 2 or 3 separate paragraphs. Well, I could have said maybe in bullet points, maybe in a table format, right? And I also specify the tone. I want this in business tone because I'll be speaking to a particular set of customers. Maybe I want to talk to a different kind of customer, so I can set these parameters. Now, remember the context, the goal, and also the source and the expectation. We can sometimes variate those. The positions sometimes change, but this sequence does provide the best result. Now, prompting practices. A couple things that we want to keep in mind when we are running these prompts. First, we want to be clear and specific. Ambiguity, we want to avoid that. Also, we want to keep this conversational, which means we want to suggest and then iterate. Give more examples if we can. I want you to do this, and this is an example of how I want to do. And sometimes you hear the word shots. That's right. A shot means as an example for Copilot. As an example, I want you to create a table in this format, column 1, column 2, column 3, as an opportunity. Also ask for feedback. As I mentioned before, hi Copilot, I want to do this, and this is the prompt that I wrote. Make this more concise, more, more simplistic, or more elaborate. You can decide on this. And of course, write legibly. You can try that. Sometimes we're like, oh, my grammar is not perfect. That's okay. But as long as you make the point clear to Copilot, it will understand that. And always check for accuracy when you respond, when I get the response from Copilot, right? It is AI generated. Maybe the fonts, maybe the sources. We hear the term sometimes hallucination. That was old-fashioned, right? Today, we don't see too much of hallucination, but it still may occur. So it's important to validate the content that we receive back and then provide details. Maybe I want to ask Copilot to give me more detail or be specific on how I want this. And sometimes we hear the term be polite as well. As we are talking to our AI, my agent, my colleague, my comrade, then I want to be able to say, well, please and thank you. This helps to set the tone for the conversation. The more polite we are with our agent, the more polite it will be back to us as well. And of course, iterate. Start small and iteration. How does this look? What about that? Let's add some more. And finally, there are some things that I want to be able to avoid. For example, being vague. Just give me a project plan. Okay, there are 10 million ways for me to do that. Which one do you want? Or give me let's say, a recipe for a cookie. But what kind of cookie do you want? Right? I want to be able to be specific. And of course, inappropriate and unethical content, I want to be able to avoid. Copilot is protecting that. We call this from a security perspective, from a behavioral perspective, from ethical perspective. Copilot does that. So asking for that kind of information, it's going to say, sorry, I am not appropriate to answer that. And you should avoid that on your prompts anyway. Also, slang, jargons, and information like that, we want to be able to avoid. That's going to basically just derail some of the prompts that you want, unless, of course, that's exactly what you want. Give me slang options to be able to speak to this particular. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you may be like, that's not exactly what I had in mind, right? So also giving conflicting instructions. We want to be clear. We don't want to be ambiguous, or we don't want to say, do this and don't do this at the same time. It's not going to work, right? Just be more clear on this. And then, of course, changing topics abruptly. It's always important to finish that topic and say, okay, now let's start a new conversation. And it's more important for you to stop that conversation altogether and then start a new conversation, right? Copilot keeps track on that conversation in mind for the duration of that iteration. And you want to be able to change pace as you go. Now, here I have some examples for us to follow in terms of prompts. Right? Can you help me, for example, rewrite a paragraph? Maybe you can select an item and rewrite, but how do I want this? Make it clear, make it more concise, list some ideas. Maybe I have some fun remote team buildings that I want to be able to do. So as you can see, some are simple examples. I have some other examples as well. Maybe I want to be able to look at, maybe I have a one-on-one with my boss or this particular person. If I'm using my licensed Copilot, I can do this / and look for that person. Or maybe I want to do a research on a particular organization. I can ask that. What this company, for example, would do. Or if I want to do a SWOT analysis of my competitors. So these are some examples of prompts that I can use. Now, in terms of prompting, we did mention we have a very vast prompt repository, which is called the Prompt Gallery. And in this Prompt Gallery, we have example prompts that I can use on the web or within my Microsoft 365. Really enhance your productivity. They are curated for a specific use cases. And I can also download it, edit them, and I can save, share, and reuse those prompts. And that's exactly what I want to do now. I want to give you an example, a demo of the Prompt Gallery. And we are going to see that in the Prompt Gallery, I can view prompts that are already available, and I can also go in and use these prompts right away. So I can access them by going to aka.ms/prompts. So let's go ahead and try that. Here we are back in our browser. There are multiple ways for us to access the Copilot Gallery, the Prompt Gallery. First, anywhere where I am with Copilot Chat open, I can click on View Prompts, and this is going to open up the Prompt Gallery. And if I click on this button for the Prompt Gallery, it will close. But again, anytime I can click on it. Next is if I go to aka.ms/prompts. This will open the Prompt Gallery as well. Here is the full-fledged Prompt Gallery. And again, it allows me to see all potential apps and resources that are available on these prompts. So I can filter the prompts on a particular service. Maybe I want to simply look at prompts that are related to Excel, for example, and I can do that. I can review prompts, and I can try that on a particular service. And down below, I can see all prompts. When I see all prompts, I can then filter on a particular app. Maybe I want to see any prompts related to Teams app, for example. And not only that, I have specific tasks. Maybe I want to catch up, I want to ask questions, and also department and job related. Maybe I am in finance. Are there any specific prompts related to finance? Here it is. Create a scenario analysis presentation. That's an interesting prompt. I can see who created that prompt and this sample prompt, and I can go ahead and run it. And finally, I also have Copilot agents available. Maybe I have some my agents that I have created, I have shared, and I can use them related to these prompts. Okay, now that we know how to access the prompt gallery, let's return to our class. Now that we have seen how to access the prompts, we saw the elements of a well-crafted prompt. Here's a knowledge check to help you solidify your learning. Again, we are using Copilot for that. I am not going to run this prompt for you. We did this at the end of the first module, but I want you to be aware of this prompt. Again, I'm going to read it to you, and you can try this at your own pace. As an expert in Microsoft 365 Chat, create 3 multiple-choice questions about elements of well-crafted prompts, common mistakes to avoid, and of course, how to pursue this related to Microsoft 365 Prompt Gallery with the examples that are there. Present me 1 question at a time, wait for my response, provide me a brief explanation of the correct answer, and then proceed to the next question. So it's a very simple prompt, but very efficient. And again, you can modify this prompt for your own needs. And this brings us to the end of module number 2. In this module, we were able to identify the key elements of effective prompts. We talked about in terms of the context, in terms of the goal, in terms of the source, and then the expectations. This helps us craft well-proportioned prompts that will be more efficient. And of course, we can always create the prompt and then ask Copilot to help us solidify that, ensure that it is exactly how we want it. With that, we also notice that it's important for us to be clear, be more concise, and well-structured when we're doing these prompts. But again, we are not perfect, so we can develop the prompt and ask our agent, ask Copilot to help us. Also, we recognize common mistakes when we are doing prompts. And finally, we talked about the prompt gallery with a large number of prompts for us to use, share, and evaluate. And this brings us to the end of this module. Let's now start with module number 3. Now for this module, module number 3, we are going to talk about working smarter with your Copilot Chat. We are going to be discussing how to enhance your productivity. Now, also, with this, we're going to talk about the environment, the enterprise-ready environment for that. So when we talk about be more secure and more collaborative, that's what we're going to be discussing here. Copilot offers Copilot pages to really simplify that collaboration. And with that, we're going to also touch base on Copilot agents to really automate some of the tasks that we do on a regular basis. So by the end of this module, you really have an idea in terms of brainstorming, summarization, creating some items, also using that with your Copilot. We're going to be talking about the Copilot pages. How do we create one? How do we collaborate with those pages? How do I streamline my workflows using those agents that we're going to be creating? Now, I'm going to give a simple example of the Copilot agent using the agent toolkit, or we call this the agent builder. And finally, we are going to talk about the enterprise data protection. It's important for us to know that all the conversations that we are having with our Copilot, particularly in our chat, is protected, and EDP is going to be a key value on that. One of the items that we notice in here in terms of Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, first of all, we mentioned that I can go in and summarize my content. So I can very well go to the chat and say I want to be able to analyze specific trends or summarize this content or give me a SWOT analysis of a particular organization. I can also brainstorm new ideas. I can upload a file and ask Copilot to summarize the file, give me the key points, give me extract action items from that, or even visualize data. I can ask Copilot to create AI-generated images, and this is going to leverage that as well. We haven't done one yet, but we may be able to do that in the next example. And finally, we want to be able to also generate code. This is a feature that's available in Copilot Chat. I'm working as a developer. Maybe there is a language that I want. I have a code that I don't quite understand. I can ask to explain that code. Maybe I want to create a new code in Java, Python, Go, or even translate between those codes. Very important for me. Now, one of the things that we can also discuss in terms of the Copilot is the idea that he speaks so many languages. Maybe I have a document that is in a particular language and I want to understand what it says. I can do that. I can simply ask Copilot, read this document and summarize for me in 300 words or less and put the output in English, Portuguese. You can decide whatever language. Very simple and very easy to do that. Now, I have here some example of these prompts that we can try as well. And this is available in your learning path. Maybe I want to summarize a document because now I have a meeting with the CEO and I want to be able to see this conversation from that perspective. Maybe I want to be able to look at a daily briefing from a particular news source. I also want to be able to look at step-by-step instructions on how to do something. This would be a very easy way for us to do with our Copilot chat. What about brainstorming ideas? What does this sound like if I want to be able to do certain things? Maybe I want to start evaluating some new options to do a new project. What are the options that I have? Or what about suggestions of new ways of doing something or drafting a blog post? I wanted to be able to do that. I have a document and I want to extract key questions from that. What about gathering insights from specific files? I want to be able to open this file, rewrite some content of that file. I want to get some suggestions from new tiles. Maybe I'm writing a new blog post or a new document, and I want to be able to do it. Maybe I want to have a very interesting image from Copilot. Then why not say that? Describe this image. I can pass on the image to Copilot, or I can say, create a similar image, or here's a document. What is the image that you can create to be able to represent that? Right? So I can analyze the content of that image and also analyze the content of my data. Maybe I have an Excel spreadsheet that I want to be able to understand and extract some insights from that. So with that, I also have ways for me to visualize the data. I do have illustrations. I also have some charts, some designs that I want to be able to work. We can also ask Copilot to give us, for example, we have brainstorming sessions. Great, what kind of questions, what should I use? Open-ended questions. And I can also generate code, as we mentioned. How do I create this particular application or this function in this particular language? I have this code, can you help me find the error? Maybe I have this Python script, I want to convert to Java, so I can do that. Oh, I want to create or extract a table from a SQL database. This is the schema. What is the best way to extract that? Very simple way for me to do it. And finally, if you think about Microsoft 365, and I want to be able to leverage these capabilities, one thing is important for us. If I want to be able to leverage the licensed version, I can import, I can look for specific content within my organization, and I can do that. I may have some chats, I may have some emails, I may have some files. I want to be able to combine that. I want it to comb through all of this and give me insights about my day. I want to be able to draft a to-do list based on my emails, my meetings, my documents, my teams. That's available as well, but again, that'll be the licensed version of Copilot. Now, we did talk about Copilot Pages. So what is Copilot Pages? That's a feature that we have in Copilot Chat that allows us to be more collaborative. I can have a prompt. Once I have the response, I can then save that into a page. And then I can share that page with my team, and we can all collaborate on this together. Now, this, the shared pages, is going to be available, in this case, in Teams, in Outlook, or Microsoft 365 apps. So I really need to have we call this the licensed version for this. So this is going to be a very collaborative way for us to work with Copilot. Now, one of the things we're going to see about getting started with Pages, I do have a YouTube video. I'm going to share the link there with you later. But it's very simple. Once I get my prompt, I can simply say, add this in Pages. And voila, Pages is started. Now I can add it instantly. I can then call other individuals to come in and collaborate with me within my organization by simply adding the @ sign to that. Now, talking about it is easy. Let's go ahead and try Pages. Let's go for a quick demonstration. But before we do that, let's take a look at this real-time collaboration on that interface. First, we did mention I can call or mention someone to come and collaborate with me. I do this by using the @ sign and also the access control. Pages are going to be saved within my tenant. So in this case, I have my Copilot Chat session. It's going to be private. All the privacy and concerns about that is going to be related to my environment. So within my tenant, within my environment, maybe I have some Outlook content that I want to be able to share. I have some Teams content. I do see that that's going to be private and protected with the EDP. Now, in terms of the use case for pages, one of the things that we see, let's say I'm a project manager and I want to be able to organize the project and share with my teams. I also want to be able to align the tasks. I can give each one of my teams specific tasks within the page. I also want to be able to create and collaborate in drafting the content or new idea generation, and also be more effective on this overall collaboration. So, how about a quick demo on Pages, finally? Here we are in Microsoft Copilot Chat in my browser. Do you remember that in module number 1, we created a project plan for a solar power project? Here it is. This is the project that we requested. Acting as an expert project manager, create a project plan for a new solar-powered baby stroller using the latest PMI standards. And Copilot gave us the project name, project number, date, time, and then added some specific sections. There's a project detail. I also have the planning, project. We have the timeline, and we have the key principles. So I'm going to collaborate with this with my teams. Why not use Pages? So when we are working with our Copilot, up here we say Open Recent Pages that I have already created. Now, if I want to create a page to collaborate with my team, notice on the bottom here, it says Edit with Pages. So right in the chat, I can click Edit with Pages. Now I can say add to a recent page, or add it in Pages. Let's go ahead and click Add it in Pages. This is going to start a new Pages, and here's my project. Now I can begin to collaborate with my team. Now in Pages, I can simply call anyone that I want to begin to collaborate. So let's say, for example, I want to ask a friend of mine called Mindy to come and collaborate on this project. So if I use the @ sign, let's go back in here, and I'm going to use the @ sign. There we go. And I can then ask for Mindy. And here we go, Mindy Johnson. And now I can send Mindy, or even say, Mindy, can you please look at section, and I can specify which section of the project Mindy is going to work on. So I can then invite as many people from my team as I want in this page. And Page is going to be very important for us because now I can share this and I can collaborate with my Copilot Chat. Once the page is created, it will be added to my list of pages. That is my project. This is the last one, so I can begin to add additional pages and have more collaboration with my team. Now that we have seen how Copilot Pages work, another item that we mentioned that is critically important for us is the use of Copilot agents. Now, the chat agents is going to help us automate those tasks. Imagine the AI-powered tool that is a Copilot agent. I have a specific way that I want this process to be done, this document to be created. Now I can automate this repetitive task using these agents. I can also look at real-time information leveraging these agents, and I can personalize my specific workflows. And I can create these agents right in the chat area. I can also create these agents by using the agent builder. Now, I can get agents that are already pre-configured. Microsoft has created some very important agents to help us with that. For example, when we open Microsoft Chat and you see on the right-hand side, I can see Prompt Coach. Prompt Coach is an example of an agent that we created. That means when I open Prompt Coach, I type in the prompt, it's going to help me verify that prompt and make it better, faster, more concise. I also have the Idea Coach. It helps me brainstorm new ideas. Writing Coach makes me even better writer. I can see my grammar mistakes, I can then correct them. What about career coach or even learning coach that allows me to go in and learn about specific topics within a specific skill that I want to take, right? So the idea of creating these agents is the idea that now I can, within my organization, I can create and share these agents with my team, and we can be more expeditious in terms of sharing those. Instead of having to do that repetitive task, I can now use the agent, customize these agents, and then share with my teams. And Copilot Studio is the tool that allows us to customize, create, and manage these agents. Now, before we go into a demonstration of the agents, I want to talk about the privacy, particular data security and privacy when we talk about Copilot Chat. It's important for us to know that keeping that enterprise data protection, that data safety is critical for us. And Microsoft Enterprise Data Protection, or EDP, is a set of security and privacy standards that we apply to everything that we do in terms of Microsoft 365 agents, Copilot, and pages in there. So in this case, when you talk about encryption of the data, all the data at rest and in transit is going to be protected and secure and encrypted. We talked about in terms of privacy of design. Remain private. Any conversation that I have with my AI, my models, are going to be private. Access controls. The fact that I can access specific components in my documents, my files, my teams, is because I have this access. So my organization permission and sensitivity and labels that I apply within my documents, within my teams, my meetings, is going to apply to Copilot as well. It is my Copilot. It leverages the knowledge and the access points that I have in order to do that. If I don't have access to the data, Copilot does not have access to the data. In that, we also talk about regional compliance, geographical regions. So if we are committing to save this data in a particular region, in a particular location, Microsoft Copilot is going to commit to that. It's going to force and is going to save the data in that particular area as well. So Copilot follows the standard data protection that Microsoft provides to all of our customers in protection of your data. And now, let's take a quick look at how to create a Copilot agent that leverages this capability that we just mentioned in terms of being more agile and expedite some of these tasks. Now, to test our agent, we are going to leverage the agent in Teams. So here we are in Teams. I click on Copilot, and I'm going to access my agent. This is the new agent. And I can call this agent by simply using the @ sign, or I can click on the agent and use it there. And as we know, it only speaks Portuguese. Any document is going to be in 300 words or less, and it's going to be in bullet point. So let's try it. I'll click the append document. Let's upload a document. And let's pick this 00, the initial presentation. And once the document is uploaded, we are going to execute it with the agent. Let's automate the process. There we go. Let's give it a second. I guess there'll be some cutting you need to do here because it's like... All right. Now the document is uploaded. Let's execute with our agent. And as we know, only speaks in Portuguese, creates in bullet point, and 300 words or less. There it is. Now I can see the gist of my document in Portuguese. If I want to go deeper, I can open the document. If not, at least I have an idea of what the document is. And as we spoke today, I have a very concise prompt, leverages the best practices. I also have pages. That's right. I can then share this document with pages, as we saw in module number 2. And this brings us to the end of our course. Now that we have seen how Copilot Chat works, we also saw and experienced the best practices, and we had an opportunity to work with pages and the agents. We have an exercise for you to try. In this exercise, which is also available in GitHub, you are going to have a few tasks to experience everything we did. First, you are going to summarize an industry trend by leveraging Copilot grounded on the web. Then you are going to brainstorm or draft an idea in session. You are going to visualize the agenda and timeline. Then you are going to draft a plan, a document for a summit. And finally, you are going to analyze and generate content from a file. Simply select a file and begin to do that. Similar to what we did, but we did the summarization in a different language. And finally, you are going to collaborate with pages. So putting all together the aspects that we learned in this class. To close this last module, module number 3, I have one last prompt for you. This is, again, a real-time knowledge check. I'm not going to run it, but I want you to experience this last prompt. As an expert in Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, create 3 multiple-choice questions about, we mentioned about in terms of files, uploading files, using pages, creating agents, and of course, EDP, Enterprise Data Protection. Present all the questions at the same time, or in this case, one at a time, wait for my response, and then provide a brief explanation and go to the next question. Again, you can use this prompt to expand your skill knowledge in knowledge base and knowledge check in many, many areas. And this brings us to the end of this last module. In this last module, we were able to leverage Copilot to brainstorm ideas, summarize information, and then we are able to also upload and look at insights of the files, summarize the files. We leverage pages for collaboration, and we learn how to create we call this an agent that really helps us automate, streamline processes and workflow. And finally, we talked about enterprise data protection, how secure all of this conversation, all of this discussion that we did within Copilot and, of course, within your organization is secure and protected. And this brings us to the end of our course. In today's course, we went through the knowledge of Copilot for Microsoft 365 Chat. We got to know Copilot for Microsoft 365 on chapter number 1. That's when we introduced the chat. We saw how to start, the many ways that we can use it, and we began to use the prompts. In module number 2, we dove deep into the prompting. We look at the best practices to optimize our prompts and get the best results. And finally, in module number 3, we began to work a little bit smarter with that. We began to also leverage pages where we began to collaborate, and we learned how to create Copilot agents. So this gives us a great perspective of how to be more productive, how to access the power of Microsoft 365 Chat with the large language models and the security to help us be more productive and make our jobs much easier, faster, and sometimes much cheaper as well. But this is not the end. We can continue our learn. Now the next steps will be preparation for credentials. Now for that, Microsoft offers credentials in various skills. These credentials are basically ways for us to show that we know how to do specific tasks. So if you are interested, Microsoft Applied Skills provide that capability. And you also have an opportunity to go for certifications. Now, the credentials are basically specific skills on specific tasks, as opposed to a certification, which is a longer, where you get a certificate that shows, oh, maybe I am an AI engineer, or I am an architect, for example. So you should try one of those. It gives you that rewarding of having completed a particular skill set. And that, we also have some specific videos to help you on your learning journey. Microsoft Learn Shows contains a large number of videos, including the video of what we just experienced today. So Microsoft Learn Shows can also help you prepare for those skills. 15, 20, 30-minute videos, very specific to a specific skill set that you want to develop. And that brings us to the end of our course. I want to say thank you for spending the time with me today, learning about Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. I hope you are looking forward to use that experience on a regular basis.